talk about this a lot. We talk about this a lot, Ivy. I think that when they openly declared war and no longer gave a shit, frankly, was COVID. Put your mask on, stay 6 feet apart, do as you're told. Churches are closed, strip joints are open, liquor stores are open. You know,
Can't buy paint.
Yeah, can't buy paint, but you can buy, Don Q 151 rum or whatever your preference was in COVID. Anyhow, welcome to Forgotten America. I'm Steve Gruber.
And I'm Ivy.
And we've lived through the culture wars. Of course, we had Governor Whitmer here. What a joy.
Oh, my gosh.
Locking down everything. While her husband was out getting his boat, we were told we couldn't go near ours or our second homes. And that's just part of the culture wars we've experienced. You've got transgenderism. You've got the Green New Deal where they want you to, run around on a bicycle or ride a horse. Of course, you can't have a horse because horses defecate and flatulate, so that's off limits. And all that. And so we've got a guy joining us today. And he lives, I think, in what you would consider, I don't know if it's lost. It was a front line at one point, but California has been single-party rule for 20 years, and you see what goes on in California. Oh, and the other part of the culture wars, of course, voter integrity, which, of course, they have none to speak of anyhow. Drew Allen is joining us, a conservative author, columnist, political commentator, host of The Drew Allen Show. And we're going to focus on deeper cultural issues today. Drew, welcome to the conversation.
Hey, great to be with you all.
Good to have you here. Look, you are on the front lines, or maybe you're behind enemy lines now. I don't know how quite to put it, but you live in Napa, gorgeous part of the world. Ivy and I have visited there. We love it. Yountville, all those great towns through there are just terrific. The vineyards, the lifestyle, but it's still behind enemy lines, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's still, even where I live, it's agricultural. So people think of Napa Valley wine, obviously, but it's farming. It's sexy farming because you're doing, grapes for wine, I always say. And there are a lot of conservatives out here, and I kind of find them because professionally, I can't hide what I do, right? When I go to events at my daughter's school and you go around the table and you're meeting people and everyone wants to know what you do, oh, my family owns this winery and I own this restaurant in Yountville. And then we get to Drew and it's like, what am I going to say? I've been a publicist for, conservatives, and I have a podcast and I'm a columnist at the Daily Signal. So it's kind of interesting because I become kind of a safe space, if you will, for a lot of these people out here who don't feel confident, expressing their political opinions, but
So hold on. So you're taking confession from conservatives.
That's right.
That's
I
what you're
am the
telling
Napa
me.
Valley priest. I'm the Napa Valley priest, and I'm taking confession from people. Exactly. I love it, kind of. I have seen a change, I think. I saw a change in people even after Charlie Kirk was killed.
Sure.
I went to an event at my daughter's school shortly after that, and I had done PR for Charlie Kirk's second to last book, Right Wing Revolution. And so I had a little bit of I didn't know him personally, but I had a little bit of professional association. And it really, that really broke me in many ways. And I cried for a week, but I went to the school function and it was fresh. It was days earlier, if not, it was maybe a week before when this happened. And there was something in the air, and people were coming up to me and were just kind of quietly saying like, hey man, I can't believe this happened. I'm so sorry. Like it changed me. So many people saying this, and by change them, it made them kind of care less about the condemnation of man. And so it gave them a boldness. And I think we've been seeing that slowly build in this country over the last number of years with all the lawfare and obviously the culture wars we'll talk about and all that. But things are changing in the country, and they're even changing in California, as you're seeing in LA with the mayoral race. The idea, I would just say this, Steve, and Ivy, the idea that we are even talking about the possibility of there being even the remotest chance of change in California, to me is indication that progress is being made.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to go to you, Ivy. I was live on the air when Charlie Kirk was shot, and
well, Steve, give a little background. Charlie Kirk was a coworker of ours on the same network that you are on daily, and that I am on daily. We knew Charlie Kirk not really, really well, but we knew him
on a first name basis, not intimately, but that's correct.
Yeah, and so continue.
So, when it happened, it was a profound moment. It still gets me.
Mm-hmm.
It does. But it changed you.
Oh, yeah. It changed me. Just like you were saying, Drew, there, when I saw what happened, of course, that video of him being shot was just all over. And as news people, we're constantly going on, okay, what's happening? What's going on? And that one close-up shot of him getting, shot, I just saw that and I was like, oh my word. There's no way that he is going to survive this. And it was an instant, I think, pull on the Holy Spirit in my life to say, hey, you've been a bit of a lukewarm Christian, Ivy, and it's time for you to come home. And like you, I sobbed for days, and literally it has changed my life and my walk with Christ. And I just, and I think I think a lot of people are feeling that same sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's so incredible that you share that, because that was my experience too. I felt like I was a lukewarm Christian. I was a believer, but it was not a priority in my life. Making money and doing other things was priority number one, right?
Yeah.
Career, etc. And I think that, this is what's amazing about the way God works. And it's hard for us to understand sometimes because we're human beings born into sin and tragedy strikes. But, there's God's upper story where, he is going to fulfill his plans no matter what we do. He's working, and, he makes the Israelites wander for a very, very long time before he brings them to the promised land. It's not on our time. And his death in some, miraculous way from God's perspective, I guess, did that to so many people. He opened up so many hearts, and he really used Charlie's both life and death, and is using it to transform other people's lives. I mean, the people that have become interested in Christianity, the people who want to put their faith first again, people that feel bold now about speaking confidently about their beliefs and, right and wrong and objective, transcendent truth and morality. It's broken open, and there's more people today that are participating in this, this war, which is spiritual, to live a life that is worthy of our faith in God, than did beforehand.
I think it did something else for me and for a lot of people as well, for you, for Ivy, for people that are either do what we do and what you do, Drew. But it took the culture war from being abstract to being a shooting war. Because what became completely obvious is you're a target, we could be shot, there are crazy people out there. When you label people as white supremacists and Nazis and fascists, you dehumanize them, and we become a legitimate target. I mean, we spent the next month, besides going to Charlie's funeral, which was a remarkable event, but we spent the next month hardening our studios with cameras and security, and because we live in America where free speech is the foundational principle that I have lived by since I was 7 years old, honestly. And now you're going to shoot me? You think that that's an acceptable way to shut somebody like me up? I mean, I was not on the platform or the pedestal that Charlie was on. But we're out there, Drew. You're out there. Ivy's out there. And we're known commodities. And therefore, when you go to your meetings and take confession from conservatives, there are other people in that room that despise you, right? I mean, I see what comes into my inbox. And I imagine you get a lot of the similar stuff, hateful stuff, threatening stuff.
And I think, too, what you said there, Drew, about the condemnation of man, I think there are people who are legitimately good people might take a look at this and say, I really need to change what I'm doing. I need to change how I'm speaking. I need to change how I'm talking about others. And maybe I need to take a step back and not call the person that I disagree with all of these things, name your...
pick your name, right.
And really start to have some introspection about that, because I really think it also gets down to the bottom line of, do we have a major decline in traditional values, in faithfulness,
in humanity,
and sanctity of life. Because would we even have gotten to this place if we had those things, those traditional values, really intertwined in our culture? What do you think?
Well, I think you're onto the crux of the problem in the country. I think one of the words we can use is patriotism.
Mm-hmm.
Gallup's been tracking patriotism since I think 2000 or 2001, and in their latest poll, I guess from last year, I believe we hit a record low 58% of U.S. adults who say they're extremely or very proud to be American. So that was down 9 points. And what's interesting, of course, is most of this decline is driven by Democrats. So with Democrats, it's 36%. Only 36% of Democrats say they're extremely, proud to be American. If you go down to Gen Z, only 41% express high pride. And, this patriotism overall has dropped nearly 30% since the late 1990s. And obviously the source of this is culture. If you teach children, right, that America is a villain in her own story, and you have weak policy that inevitably follows, you're going to create weak men. You're going to create confused kids, confused priorities, and you're priming a nation, for erosion. So, that to me, that's a fundamental thing that we have to address in this country, which is patriotism. Because if you love a country and you start from same thing with like American citizens, if you love this country and have a shared bond, you wouldn't have people out there calling the three of us Nazis and all these sorts of things, because there's zero affection for us, because there's zero affection for this place.
Yeah. I just saw this study, and I'll focus on the black family for a moment here, because I think the rise of socialism and these far left ideas are part and parcel to where we are today, Drew, and I'll tell you why. In 1960, better than 90% of the black families in America had two parents. Mm-hmm. Then you had the advent of the Great Society. You had the advent of LBJ's, war on welfare and all these things. And the welfare state came out of this, war on poverty, excuse me, and the welfare state came out of this. It took one generation for the two-parent family in the black community, as an easy example, to fall to one parent. One generation of socialism, destroying the family values, the norms. And I use the black family as the example. They survived slavery. They survived Jim Crow. They survived lynching. They survived all these horrendous things in history, not just here, but around the world. One generation of socialism, one generation of far leftist ideas destroyed that nucleus in that community and everywhere else as well. Mm-hmm. But that's an easy example of a group of people that had overcome the worst of the worst, intact as a family, to be destroyed by far left ideas. Your thoughts?
Well, it's a case study in obviously American exceptionalism too, because for the ignorant and uninformed, they could criticize what I'll probably say, but it's the truth. Under Jim Crow, for example, which would be Democrat segregation, by the way, yes. The black community was actually pretty prosperous. I mean, they had to create a parallel society for themselves where they had their own communities with businesses and barbershops and everything else, but the kids could read, and they didn't view themselves as victims, despite the fact that they truly were victims. And to your point, obviously with Lyndon Baines Johnson and the Great Society and the creation of the welfare state, it eroded all of that. It changed it broke the mentality that actually made the black community in this country one of the most impressive in world history, because despite slavery, despite all of the horrible things that were experienced in a part of American history, thanks to Democrats, they managed to succeed in spite of it. And now they can be given every opportunity under the sun, and many in that black community cannot succeed, even with that. And that is because you are robbing them of the belief, which is necessary in this country, that we are not victims, that we overcome obstacles. I mean, it's the reason we in 200 years were able to go from, ragtag, a bunch of people, with squirrel rifles to putting somebody on the moon. It's because of this belief. And I remember when Joe Biden said, America is just an idea, which we are creedal, but we are not some abstract idea like, the Constitution is a living, breathing document. Let's just, it means whatever we want. It doesn't. We are a people with a shared history and a shared bond. And that is what makes us so great. And we have to get back to those basics. But again, it comes from an acceptance that this is an exceptional country that is unique in all the world and that we should be proud of it.
We should be.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the polling because Gallup, the polls revealed that patriot pride was at an all-time high right after 9/11. So what happened in that time span from 9/11 to now that we've had this major decline in patriotism in America? Yeah.
Barack Obama. I mean, if you see the numbers there, I mean, what's so interesting, yeah, we reached a high, and Republicans and Democrats in particular, I like looking at it based on the political, the different political groups, Republican and Democrat in this case. But we were roughly the same, Republicans and Democrats, in terms of pride after 9/11. But something very interesting happened. Yes, it did start to decline, and I remember looking at the Gallup polling, and what was so fascinating to me is that after Barack Obama was elected, Republicans still expressed, a larger percentage of Republicans expressed extreme pride in being American than Democrats. And you would think, right, that upon Barack Obama's election, right, that would be the moment of the highest pride amongst Democrats ever. That was their guy, half white, half black. This was a milestone, and yet they still weren't as proud to be American as Republicans. And and Republicans have maintained relatively consistent. And here's the thing too: our pride in this country isn't related to, it doesn't correlate with who the president is. That's what's interesting, I think, about looking at those numbers too. For the Democrats, it does correlate to who the president is, but even then it is still declining. So there's something obviously with, and we know what it is, I think, which is what they're taught culturally and what they're taught about this country being evil. Because if you believe that this country is an evil, awful place from its founding on, I mean, how could you ever have pride in this country? You can't.
Right. Yeah. And which brings me back to education, which is, what are we teaching people? You go back to World War II. The collective education was an 8th grade education of the soldiers that went up the beaches of Normandy, that went to North Africa, that went to, the Pacific Theater. 8th grade education. And I would tell you, there is no question in my mind that 8th grade education exceeds the majority of high school and even college educations today. Those kids could read, they could write, they knew American history, they knew where they came from, they knew what this country was about, they knew they were fighting real tyrants in Europe, real tyrants in Japan and Asia. And that 8th grade education was superior to what we have today. There is no question, Drew, that these kids are taught piles of garbage. I mean, Howard Zinn was a criminal, an absolute criminal. The People's History of the United States is fiction, something he wrote in less than 4 months by plagiarizing his friends, by the way, for those of you keeping score at home. Howard Zinn was not only a dishonest fiction writer, he was a plagiarist who stole the fictional ideas from other people, and that crap is still inside textbooks today in the United States, and that is a crime against our children.
Yeah. The children are really the true victims in all of these things, and these wild experiments. We're kind of lab rats. I saw, Victor Davis Hanson came out and said something about with one of his video op-eds that we're lab rats in Gavin Newsom's experiment, and I think that's true. And we're seeing the devastating results. I mean, I want to get back to the fatherless homes, because I think it's interesting to try and prioritize, okay, how do we reverse engineer now and fix the society? I mean, you've got, I think, roughly 1 in 4 American children who live in fatherless homes. And as great as America is, I mean, that's triple the rate that it is in many other nations. And so obviously we know that is a direct driver of poverty, crime, of, high school dropout, obviously, and despair. And that needs to be fixed. And I think it's apropos that, it's June, which to other people, not us, it's Pride Month. And it's incredible. We don't spend a month celebrating this country on July 4th, obviously, for our Independence Day. I mean, this is the 250th birthday of the country, and you've got, mostly B-list music artists who are being pressured to drop out of participation, from the bullies that hate this country. And so, Independence Day, you might get a barbecue and a half-hearted, parade, depending on where you live. We don't do this kind of thing for Memorial Day or Veterans Day or anything that's a great occasion, but we dedicate a month to pride. And, most people in America are live and let live as it relates to being gay, for example. But, that month-long celebration is not about, gay rights or whatever it is. It's a stick in the eye of people in this country who believe in the importance of the nuclear family.
Right.
And it represents a effort. And this is the thing about the left, too. They are the least tolerant. It's such a lie. And I'm so tired of the gaslighting about talking about tolerance. They were so tolerant of Charlie Kirk that they assassinated him,
Yeah, that's right.
So
and celebrated it. Not only did he get killed, they celebrated it. They danced, they cheered. The videos were everywhere. I mean, how dark is your soul?
Yeah.
If you're dancing for the public execution of somebody just because you don't like them.
Well, and we as a society don't want to have an honest diagnosis. We're kind of doing the Democrat game, many of us, which is, they lost the election. They do their 200-page diagnostic on why they lost, and they can't even observe why they actually lost, because they don't want to admit the truth, which is that they're a vile party, and all their ideas are horrible and evil. But with this diagnostic, I wrote a chapter in my book for Christ and Country, which was about Charlie Kirk's assassination, and I compared 9/10, and I said 9/10 is the new 9/11. And my point was that I was a freshman in high school when 9/11 happened, and it shattered the illusion that we were safe, right? That we were protected because of our oceans and geography from terrorism and attacks like that. And we realized we weren't safe anymore. And then you looked across the other side of the world, and you saw in Pakistan and other Middle Eastern countries, they were actually celebrating our pain, handing out candy to children and whatnot.
Yeah, they were.
And it was similar on 9/10. I mean, Charlie was killed, and then people I went to high school with were celebrating online at a Catholic Jesuit all-male college prep school. I mean, everywhere around us, we know, from prominent people to not prominent, your neighbors, there were people involved in this. It wasn't just isolated incidents. And these people were not radicalized overseas in a mosque. They were radicalized on CNN, watching CNN every night. They were radicalized in our schools. And I am tired of us not having a serious discussion about the dangerous situation this country is in, because, it is radical domestic terrorism, and how many people have to die, before we can actually demand accountability from these people. Their rhetoric is getting people killed.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I want to go back. I'm surprised that it's 1 in 4 families have no dad. I actually thought it would be higher, to be honest with you.
And what is the cause of the decline of the nuclear family? Like what?
Well, I think part of it was what Drew said there. I mean, you've got the Pride Month, you've got anything can be a family, my two mommies, whatever it is. But one other thing that I think is a glaring example of the failure of fathers, and we have weak men. You mentioned that earlier, Drew. We have very weak men. I don't have that problem. I'm guessing you don't have that problem. I am toxic masculinity defined, and I'm perfectly fine with it, right? And that doesn't mean I go out and make a scene or do this or that or get in bar fights on the weekends. But I stand up for my family. We run this thing. Have a mom, we have a dad. It's how we run these things. But I want to point out one thing that a lot of people miss. When you look at these school shooters, when you look at these monsters that take out and kill children in schools, almost to the person, they came from homes with no father or a father figure that was basically absent in the home. It's almost 100% lock, and that is a demonstration of the mental problems that kids come out of these single-family homes with. And it's not across the board. Look, I applaud single moms. They're busting their ass. I get it. All right, I get that. But you need two parents. Dad has a function. Mom has a function. That's the best way to do it. but there are a lot of great people out there doing the best they can, because we're also in a society that, divorce is a 5-minute deal. Yeah, it didn't work out. We get divorced. Nobody sticks with anything anymore. There's no loyalty. Where is the loyalty? That's something that's, part and parcel to our lives in everything we do. We're honest, we have integrity, and we're loyal as hell. Yeah. Your thoughts?
Look, my wife and I, we live in Napa. We've got 2 young daughters, and we have no help around us. And I'm not even talking nannies and stuff, although we live in a very affluent area, and that's kind of the way a lot of people operate. They have nannies, or both parents work, or whatever. It's expensive to live over this way. But we don't have any help, and we didn't go on our first date since having our first daughter. It was like 3 years. Which is, I tell people that, and by the way, I'm not saying you should do this. This is totally unhealthy. But, it was just our situation. And I say that because, so you answer your question about marriage. Like, we've had plenty of ups and downs. Now, we were never going to give up or, cut the cord on our relationship. But I think that anybody with kids or that's married can understand that, if you don't prioritize each other, you have problems in your relationship. And so the fact that we didn't go on a date for basically 3 years without both kids, we didn't do it. We couldn't, or just, didn't make it happen with a babysitter, whatever. But we didn't do it. And so I say that because we are still married, and we still love each other very much, and we fight every single day for this marriage. We don't succeed all the time, but part of that mentality comes from the Bible. It comes from my spiritual, my relationship with God, and the decline in now after Charlie, we've seen an uptick in this, which is a good thing. But I think you can also trace the problems in America to the decline in participation in church. And, organized religion, distrust in it, whatever it is. And obviously, we're all mortal and we're born into sin. And so churches can decline, churches can fly the rainbow flag, and it's not a church anymore, et cetera. But, there's a correlation to this. Now, if, whether it's the nuclear family and parents and toxic masculinity, toxic femininity, whatever that would be too, the North Star is actually spiritual. And when people don't have that as their kind of compass anymore, obviously you're going to have problems and disarray in society. The reality is that, yes, this is a Christian nation, and it's was built by Christians, and Christianity is in our DNA. That's not to say you have to be a Christian to be an American, but it is part of who we are. It is spirituality and that pursuit of transcendent truth that keeps this country together and keeps our families intact as well. And I do not think you can discard the significance of participation in and belief in God, and at least, right, the effort to strive to please God, to live your life in a way knowing that you're going to fail, but at least you're pursuing that. But we're in a position now where the trans flag and the rainbow flag and Pride Month, all this stuff has replaced religion. It's a religion unto itself, but this is why we're having all these issues in this country because, too many people have been led astray from what we know works. It's not just that, it's not like you can sit here and not be a Christian, but you can also appreciate what the fruits of what that has given you in terms of freedom and liberty and everything else. And the same thing is true with the immutable truths of what the Bible teaches us about family and what it means to be a man and a woman, because those things work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that, going back to the masculinity part, I think society want to emasculate men. I think
some do. Yeah.
Some do, not all. And there are women that want to emasculate men. And I think even in classrooms today, our son is 14 years old. He is hyper. He is very smart. He's a go-getter, and, he rocks in his chair, and he gets in trouble for that almost every day. Yeah. It's okay, so what?
Yeah. Every day.
But I think oftentimes schools want him to act like an appropriate little girl, and that's just not the way that boys are built. And I couldn't agree more in terms of, yes, there is this construct that the Bible lays out and how a family should be. And if you follow those tenets, life can be pretty good, and it's very helpful. But we do live in a secular society, and I would say that there are so many things, whether it's social media or movies, however many other things are all coming.
Bombarding.
All of the secular viewpoint of the world is being bombarded. And I feel so badly for our son because I'm like, man, how can he navigate all this? And we try to help him with that. And we don't allow social media platforms.
You know what it makes me think of, and we've talked about this a lot recently.
Yeah.
You've got a series, you start watching a series, maybe you do with your wife, and you're kind of getting through. Here's episode 3. Oh, here's the gay scene. You got to have the gay scene. I'm like, why does there always have? I mean, why does that have to be interjected and pushed into every series? And we'll turn series off and say, you know what? Done. Don't care. It wasn't necessary to the storyline, but you've got to inject it anyway because that's the narrative of society. That's the way they do these things.
Well, it's not only that. It's also like everything goes. Like no
everything
matter what
goes.
you want.
That's right.
It's hedonistic out there. Like whatever I want, when I want it, I can have it. And I actually read a book called Unhooked Generation. It's about 10 years ago now. Talking about, what that women want the romantic feeling all the time in their life. And if they don't have that bubbly feeling, when they're in a romantic relationship, that they're going to move on from that. They're going to move on to the next person. And I just think that's so sad.
Sick perspective, yeah.
Well, people don't want to sacrifice. They've been fed a lie, too, about what life should be and what it should look like. And life is hard, period, And it's not always going to be so easy and like you're explaining, have this kind of fuzzy feeling all the time, and yet you have to work and fight for that. But teaching kids that I think that you are going to struggle. That's part of the life experience. You are going to fail, and failure is part of success as well. Because without failure, you're not going to learn the important lessons that are required for you to eventually become a success.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
I don't know. I mean, I'm 39, so I'm kind of like at the aging out part of the millennials, but I think I'm the last generation that really I tasted the tail end of, I guess you'd call it analog childhood. I mean, I just riding around on my bike, until the street lights went off and all that sort of thing. And now we have social media. I guess where I want to go with this is that, we as parents, y'all, myself, we can talk about all the ailments that are plaguing society, but at the end of the day, parents have to bear a lot of the responsibility because, and I get there are reasons that we're in this situation. It's so expensive. It's so hard to live. You have two parents that work. They've got to get rid of the kids a lot of time. But, parents want to be lazy too. They want to sit and, just sit on the couch, and they don't want to be parents, because it's too hard or it's an This is it. People don't want to be inconvenienced in their lives. Right. And so they don't look at kids oftentimes as a blessing and a responsibility. Oh, it's an inconvenience.
That's exactly right. That's exactly how they look at it.
We can't turn them over. We can't turn them over to all the schools and everything else. We have to still be involved in their lives. And unfortunately, with a smartphone and all that sort of stuff, you have this a bit. If you are not going to be if you're not going to tend to your child, if you're not going to focus on your child and give them your attention and be an active participant in their life, guess what? It's never been easier than today for that kid to go and find a parent somewhere else, which could be scrolling on their phone, or a teacher that's eager to indoctrinate them with gender theory at school, Gavin Newsom who wants, free diapers that cost, 4 times what they would cost if you bought them yourself. It's this cradle to grave, government dependency.
Yeah. I want to talk about something else here that I think is a big part of what we face, and that's the devaluation of life. For kids today, abortion's just normal, right? It's just something that's in the conversation. It's there. And so you have this devaluation of life, but I want to take it to what they're doing in Canada. The Medical Assistance in Dying program has now claimed over 100,000 Canadians. It was supposed to be for the terminally ill. It was supposed to be for the infirm. It was supposed to be for old people that are in their lives. But now if you're depressed, you can show up in Canada and other countries and say, hey, I don't feel well, and they'll sign you right up. They'll off you. By the way, for those keeping score at home, 97% plus of those that they've killed in Canada were white people. Sounds like a racist program to me, but, I'm just a guy. I think the devaluation of life, which I think leads to murders like Charlie Kirk's, because abortion's it's just part of the fabric now. And if you try to take away abortion, well, you're taking away health care. Health care for who? Obviously not for the child. We had a guy on this morning who was talking to a liberal. I'll just share this story. And she was a pro-choice individual, and he said, look, we're trying to save the dog population. There's too many dogs. We want to be able to raise money to abort puppies. Oh, my God, you can't do that. But you're pro-abortion. Yeah, but you can't abort puppies. This is how dumb these people are, Drew. Don't touch the puppies, but kill a human being. That's cool. I mean, how did we get there? The devaluation of life.
Yeah. Well, it goes back into the conversation about us being selfish and us wanting to live a life in which we're never inconvenienced. And so, I mean, this is the argument with abortion, right? This is fundamentally it. I mean, even for the abortion advocate, if a woman is pregnant and wants the child, right? It's based on desire. If she wants the child, she shows the sonogram to everybody. She talks about the baby that she's going to give birth to. Now, if that same person simply doesn't want the child, suddenly it's a clump of cells, and she's free to abort it. And so, the right to life is based on simply your opinion in the moment. Whether it's convenient, whether you want the baby or don't want the baby, which is absurd. And it's true when you devalue life at the beginning stage, like you're talking about, or later in life with all these individuals in Canada legally being able to kill themselves through assisted suicide. Obviously, if life doesn't have any importance or significance or meaning, well, what does it matter if you kill Charlie Kirk? Because Charlie Kirk is just a clump of cells. I'm just a clump of cells. I mean, who cares? I mean, I could have been aborted when I was a kid. No big deal. I'm here now, whatever. What's the big deal? Just die now, die tomorrow. And there's no value whatsoever. I mean, this is what I think a lot of people fail to understand with the abortion argument. It's not just about the objective truth that is a life that is worthy of protection, right, within the womb. It's not simply about that. It's about all these ramifications that come from that, which is how we view life after you come out of the womb. And that's actually, I mean, an equally important reason to fight for, to be pro-life, because it spills out into culture and it frays, the fabric of society begins to fray.
So sad.
Agreed.
I'm depressed, therefore I want to end my life. But see, that mentality, and I go back to the biggest crime against our young people, beyond parents not being parents or being inconvenienced, as you point out. But, my mother was a fifth grade school teacher. She never would have tolerated any of this stuff. She would have pushed back. She would have taught kids to read. She spent her summers teaching kids to read because she knew if they couldn't read, their life would be miserable. So literacy was her big thing. But, they didn't do it with it. And here's something else I can track back as a cultural problem. And it really happened about 2010, about the time Obama, was coming into his first term. We started putting out the Chromebooks and the iPads and all this stuff into the classroom. And I talked to my son here, I don't know, a week ago. And I said, what'd you do in class today? I was asking about his Spanish class. Well, we watched a lesson on the Chromebook. And then what? Well, then we answered some questions on the Chromebook. And then what? Well, she had us look up just some other stuff on the Chromebook. What did the teacher do? Well, she sat at her desk. That's not teaching. That is babysitting. That is not being an educator. That's somebody, here's your device. Go ahead, look at your device. I'm sorry, and teachers don't get paid enough. They get 3 months off a year, and I'm sick of hearing that. But the teachers' unions, the one thing they never talk about are the students. I think government schools, by and large, have done so much damage because we've allowed them to be infiltrated. By the time they get to college, they're ready for full-blown indoctrination because they've been prepped for 12 years.
Yeah, well, they've been indoctrinated, and then they go into college, and then that's activation.
Exactly.
Well, the level of entitlement is insane. It ties in, again, to personal responsibility. Not all professions are going to, turn you into a almost trillionaire like Elon Musk. I'm sorry. And teachers do quite well. They get paid for the summer off. And the argument's always, well, we need to keep giving teachers more money. And look, I know teachers, and, many of them are wonderful people, obviously. And there are professions you can get into also that don't pay as well as a teacher and don't have the benefits of summer vacation. But all I hear every time, it's like not all teachers, obviously. There are teachers listening, I'm sure, take it, I'm talking about specific people that you probably know. But on the one hand, some of these teachers, especially those that are promoting the teachers' unions or involved in the teachers' unions, et cetera, on the one hand, they talk about what great sacrifice these teachers make, right?
Please.
They're fighting on the front lines for your kids every day and yada, yada, yada. But on the other hand, they're talking about how they just need to get paid more and more. So which is it? Are you in the classroom because you just love children and you feel a responsibility to teach them and shape them? Or is it because, you want a better pension and you want, more pay, et cetera? So it's just everything with the left is contradictory.
Yeah. One of the things that I've heard you speak about in the past, and I want to get to this before we run out of time, virtues. We've lost duty, responsibility, faith, sacrifice, discipline, perseverance, a tolerance for pain. You keep talking about people don't want to be inconvenienced. They don't want to be inconvenienced about anything. We had a guest on this podcast a while back talking about the failure of parenting, and this all kind of ties together. He was in a home of two parents, and their two kids. And mom had made dinner, and she put out dinner, and here's dinner and the two kids were like, I don't like that. I'm not going to eat that. And instantly, dad was on the phone ordering a pizza. Right there he is, boom, instant gratification, and he's like, first of all, that leads to obesity. So when 12-year-olds start picking what's for dinner, you get ice cream and French fries and cheeseburgers, and you get fat kids. But the point that he was making was, don't order the pizza. And the guy's like, well, I don't consider starvation to be a tool to discipline. He goes, it's not starvation. There's food on the table. Your wife cooked dinner, but your kids don't like it, so you order a pizza for them instantly. I mean, what are we teaching these kids except that you've got DoorDash and you've got Netflix and you've got, 4 fast food joints on every corner when you get a car? Everything's instant. And maybe that's part of the problem, Josh.
Well, they think that, they don't want to embrace the role of being a parent.
There it is again.
Don't have kids. I mean, you're, and this is I talked to Newt Gingrich about this like a couple months ago. Somehow I got him to come on my show, and I was talking about being a parent and how it changed my mentality so much because I'm always a dad, 24/7. It never stops.
That's right.
And the same thing true. We were talking about being an American citizen and our duty and responsibility as a citizen, and Newt was saying, look, it's somehow we got in this place where we think that our duty is only every 2 or 4 years to go and vote once in a while, but it's a 24/7, 365-day-year responsibility to be an American citizen, and you need to treat it as such. And if we treated the way we parent the same way we shepherd this nation and take care of this nation, we'd be in a lot better situation. But I think it's crazy that you have earlier generations, right? The greatest generation, even some of the boomers, right? These people faced Great Depression. They faced world wars and fought in them. And somehow they came back and built stronger bonds and thicker skin than people today who've never faced anything. And they understood personal responsibility, obviously. They understood, to your point, duty and sacrifice. It's about this. You have to show up for your family and your community and your country when it's hard. And that's what so many people don't understand. That's the real test of character. It's, can you do these things when it's easy and fun? Sure. Okay, but what about when it's hard and you don't want to do it? Then
That's
can
right.
you do it? I mean, that separates the men from the transgender boys stealing trophies from girls.
Yeah.
That's right.
We have a thing that we say here. Do what you have to do when you're supposed to do it, whether you like it or not.
You like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. Do what you have to do when you're supposed to do it, whether you like it or not. And we've said that around this household.
And quite frankly, it's your duty, like you were saying there. It's your duty to be a parent. You've decided to become a parent. You need to take that seriously. It's your duty to take care of yourself and your family. And it's a duty for you to be involved in civics and, be part of this country. And yeah, sometimes that requires sacrifice of your time and your emotions and everything else and sleep. But it is...
Maybe people are just too selfish.
People want comfort. They seek comfort. And anytime anything gets hard, they just, well, we'll just, pacify our kids. Okay, well, I cooked dinner and they don't want it. I don't want to argue today, so I'm just going to order a pizza. No, don't do that.
Yeah. Before we let you go here today, Josh, I just want to know, because we come out here every day, 5 hours a day, we're live on the air, plus we do the podcast and other things we do in speaking engagements and so forth. We're still optimists. We've heard a lot of things that are wrong here today, but I still believe in this country. I guess I'm like Ronald Reagan. I look out at a crowd of people and I see possibilities.
Yeah.
I see possibilities for greatness in this country. And they can say whatever they want about this country, but there was a reason 20 million people came in over the border illegally during Joe Biden's years. It's because they vote with their feet. This is still the best place, the best thing that's ever happened to the world, the best chance at freedom, financially, spiritually, emotionally. America, to me, is still the greatest thing. It's not an experiment. It's a functioning nation, the longest functioning government in world history. We live in it. We ought to fight for it every day. We do. Are you an optimist?
Yeah, I am an optimist. Naturally, kind of when it comes to the country, but also even when I don't want to be an optimist, I'm an optimist about it because I understand that is the correct attitude that is going to bring about the greatest positive influence in my own life and my community. And I think that people really, I mean, and that's the thing with the left. That's what's so crazy about it. Like if they would just break from this cycle of victimhood, they would actually find the happiness that they think is not coming to them because of this being an evil nation. It's not because this is an evil nation. It's because the ideas that you believe that come from the left and the Democrat Party are responsible for your misery. You don't have to be miserable. It's a choice. And people have to remember that, this is not, I guess, what you would call a proposition nation, where it's not a bunch of interchangeable parts. We're a particular people with a particular story, and it's a story of liberty that came from, blood and sacrifice. Our story's amazing. We tamed a wilderness. We defeated tyranny multiple times. We built the greatest nation in the history of the world in a very short amount of time. I mean, no nation in history from ancient Rome, you pick it, has a more incredible, inspiring story than the United States of America. And it's so sad to me that people don't realize that they're a part of something. Like, I don't think of my life in terms of, okay, I recognize that 1,000 years are going to go by potentially when I'm dead, and then America will be, ancient like Rome or whatever else. And when we look back on this history, even right now and preceding it, people will be mesmerized by what we've accomplished and what this nation is. And that people can't see that now and realize how fortunate they are in the moment is so tragic to me.
It is. I agree with you on that, but we are optimists. You have to be an optimist. You have 2 little kids. You have to be optimistic that you might sleep tonight, that you might not have to clean up more diapers than your wife. I mean, there is optimism there, a real optimism, Drew. Anyhow, really appreciate you being here, and I'm proud that you live in California. Napa Valley is a beautiful place, and what you're doing there, even if you change a couple of minds here and there, I mean, to me, that's the responsibility. Change a couple of minds, have conversations, destroy the myth that somehow you're a conservative, therefore you're a white supremacist, you're a fascist. That nonsense gets swept out the door every day when I talk to people, and I know you're doing that every day. Last word to you.
Well, I would just say, look, it'd be easy to leave this state and go somewhere else and have a more comfortable life in some ways. But, I think that I have to walk the walk, and part of what we talk about today is when it's hard, can you stay there? And I think, I don't fault anybody who wants to leave the state, but I think that I'm called to stay here right now. And if I'm going to stay here, though, I've got to make an effort to change my community. I think everyone's attitude has to shift to be stewards of wherever they live. So I will keep doing that and living by example, hopefully.
And where can they find you? Where's the Drew Allen Show? Where can they find it? Where can they enjoy more conversations with you?
So Drew Allen Show, everywhere podcasts are available. You can subscribe to my Substack, drewallen.substack.com. And that'll keep you, that's enough information to stay in touch.
There you go. Thanks for being here. Real honor.
God bless you guys. I appreciate y'all.
God bless you, my friend.
Too. Thank you, Drew.
Well, there you have it, Ivy. Everything that's wrong with America and everything that's possibly right.
Well, I mean, we could talk for weeks and months about this topic because there's just so many things.
It's near and dear to us.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're in this trench every day, and it's important, though, to get perspective from Napa. We could fight from Napa. I could live there.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Just for the record.
The valley is incredibly beautiful. If you've not been there before, I highly recommend it.
Taxes are a little rough.
Yeah, well, if you just want to go visit.
Just look into it for us. We can live in Napa.
Yeah. That was something I would say that we did right in terms of our son's education and our daughter's education. Where they went to school, one of the first things that they taught were the virtues. And, duty, responsibility, faith, sacrifice, discipline, perseverance, and I can go down the list. But how important those things are and how easily we forget how important those things are. And if you can begin to craft your life and being virtuous, that can really transform you. And let's not forget, pick up your Bible, read it. If you read it more than 4 times a week, I promise you, it will transform your life. It will transform who you are. It will break chains that you never even realized, one that you have had or things that have just been keeping you down. So my recommendation for today.
Good one. It's a good one. 4 days a week. I don't know why that is. There's something that happens. If you read the Bible more than 4 days a week, which I've been doing for a while now, first of all, it's educational, and I learn something new every time I read it, so you've got that. Anyhow, Drew Allen was great. The Drew Allen Show, you can go find him. Forgotten America here, it's real easy. Become a free subscriber. Smash the like button. Send us notes. Who do you want us to have on? What topics do you want to cover? Let us know. We greatly appreciate it. We'll see you next time right here on Forgotten America.